Easily my most anticipated game, probably ever, is The Last of Us Part 2. This is a video I've been wanting to make for literally years, but have not had all the pieces of the puzzle until now. Now that the initial wave of hype has died down since the release of the new trailer and gameplay, and I've had some time to digest, I thought I'd contribute my thoughts to the conversation. A lot of which is in the broader consciousness, but also some things I don't think many are taking into consideration or talking about at all. In this video, I've tried to collect and organize everything we think we know so far about the game and what we can expect. The very first trailer from way back in 2016 was essentially a music video. Ellie tunes a guitar with shaking hands before performing what seems to be an autobiographical elegy. This song is a riff on Psalm 23:4. It starts, "Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me."
No, I can't walk on the path of the right, 'cause I'm wrong.
What are you doing, kiddo? You really gonna go through with this?
I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
Yeah, the thing with songs is you could take them literally or they're a metaphor for something else. And just like everything else we're putting out there, we're not going to say a whole lot about that song.
Okay, but is it literal or a metaphor?
Yes.
Oh, yes, okay. Okay, cool, just two.
So how do we interpret this song? On one hand, we have an Ellie singing about her literal journey through this dangerous and violent world, but metaphorically, it could be interpreted that Ellie is dying a slow death. She knows she is dying, and she will exact revenge before she does. In light of the depiction of carnage left in Ellie's wake, she the only survivor, still wet with the blood of others, it would be easy to assume her trembling is just the adrenaline. But we know Ellie's history and her condition, and her trembling hands could be the tell that her infection is worsening. Consider this scene from The Last of Us Part 1.
Take me to her.
You don't have to worry about her anymore. We'll take care.
I worry. Just let me see her, please.
You can't. She's being prepped for surgery.
The hell you mean, surgery?
The doctors tell me the cordyceps, the growth inside her, is somehow mutated. It's why she's immune. Once they remove it, they'll be able to reverse engineer a vaccine. A vaccine.
But it grows all over the brain.
It does.
Ellie and those who know her believe her to be immune, but her immunity is better thought of as resistance. She is still infected after all. The doctor said her infection is a mutated strain. For all we know, using Ellie's immunity to try and create a vaccine against the OG cordyceps could have been impossible, and killing Ellie would have been for nothing, which seems to have been Joel's instincts on the matter. Since it grows all over her brain, eventual and significant nerve damage could very well be underway, leading to those tremors. Then again, it seems she can control the shakes. What's more, Ellie's infection could be starting to affect her in a myriad of ways, maybe more so emotionally than physically. What if Ellie's catalyst for revenge isn't the death of someone she loves, but instead it's the trademark symptoms of a cordyceps-infected human, that sudden and irrational bloodlust? While this is an interesting theory, this found surgeon's recorder from The Last of Us Part 1 suggests otherwise.
April 28th. Marlene was right. The girl's infection is like nothing I've ever seen. The cause of her immunity is uncertain. As we've seen in all past cases, the antigenic titers of the patient's cordyceps remain high in both the serum and the cerebrospinal fluid. Blood cultures taken from the patient rapidly grow cordyceps and fungal media in the lab. However, white blood cell lines, including percentages and absolute counts, are completely normal. There is no elevation of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and an MRI of the brain shows no evidence of fungal growth in the limbic regions, which would normally accompany the prodrome of aggression in infected patients.
Basically, what's being said here is that Ellie's infection isn't going to lead her to violence. The last thing I want to discuss from this first trailer is Joel's appearance. It's strange for a variety of reasons. In part 1, he and Ellie were inseparable, for the most part. So I ask, why is he just now showing up after Ellie single-handedly kills everyone in this house? The symbolism of his appearance is highly suggestive. His coming out of a bright white light, it's almost cliche in its implications. And although it's not uncommon storytelling technique for the dead or simply imaginary characters to haunt the protagonist, and this could be in line with Ellie's infection taking its toll on her mind, I think this would be out of line with The Last of Us' more grounded take on reality. While I do think Joel will be present and a huge part of The Last of Us Part 2, I do have to admit that in my heart, I know the most narratively appropriate catalyst for Ellie's revenge would be the death of Joel.
What was the first question?
Joel, alive or dead?
It depends at which point. Everybody dies at some point.
Wow. Hey, guys! Quick reminder of mortality, just in case you hadn't thought
say a
about
little
the
bit
void.
about the thing with like, it's so interesting. Like we always want to go into our games and people know that there's stakes. There's real stakes. And with The Last of Us, no one is safe. And we wanted people to go into The Last of Us Part 2, especially with this theme, and what we're trying to say with this game is knowing that no one is safe, not even these two. And it's funny, like working on Uncharted 4, we really wanted to raise the stakes as well, but that game is much more lighthearted. So
Wait, what?
We had to call it a thief's end and do all these crazy chills to get people to think, like, is it possible for Nathan Drake to die in this game? And with this, we released one trailer. Joel walks through a door and it's like, oh my God, is Joel a ghost? Is he dead?
Well, that's enough out of Neill. Let's turn to you two.
Hi.
Moving on to the most surprising and puzzling The Last of Us Part 2 content released so far is that second trailer that premiered at Paris Games Week in 2017. There isn't a familiar face in the entire thing. Actually, I take that back. There is one familiar face. I thought this was Ellie for the first few moments. The facial resemblance is striking despite her larger frame. It looks like 10 years have passed and she's gone full-on Mad Max survivalist. But this isn't Ellie, as far as I can tell. This woman doesn't have that trademark scar on her right eyebrow. I think the general consensus of internet speculation is that this is Ellie's mother, Anna. Various social media and interviews hint at this as well. At first, I was on board with this speculation. It kind of seemed to make sense. Much how The Last of Us Part 1 starts with a 20-year flashback, I thought, oh clever, this is a flashback of Ellie's mother, 20 years before the events of The Last of Us 2. However, with the addition of the 2018 gameplay trailer, where Ellie takes on the same faction, I believe that rules out this possibility that this is a flashback. There were only a few factions mentioned at the first game, and they all seem to know of each other's existence, and the Seraphites were never once mentioned. So it's my belief that this is an entirely new faction. I think better evidence that this isn't a flashback is the general ambience of the world. It seems darker, further into the post-apocalypse. The weapons are simple, some of the clothing looks handmade, although that could just be the cult. There's no electricity of any kind. If this were in the immediate years following the outbreak, would we see this level of decay in the burning car and the nature regrowth? This scene takes place on a highway under a giant navigation sign, yet the overgrowth is so severe. This indicates to me this scene isn't in the first years after the outbreak. I think it's at least a parallel story, maybe further in the future.
They are nested with sin.
Besides going on looks alone, I understand why so many assume this woman is related to Ellie. And it's mostly because the creators of this game are going out of their way to plant specific ideas about this character. But when scrutinized even slightly, the logic falls to pieces.
What was awesome with Hallie is, like, I remember the first day we're going over the story, and like I'm like, okay, I'm pretty confident about the opening, pretty confident about the ending. This big, giant middle part, not so sure. And already the first day we started wrestling with these ideas, and she already had like awesome ideas. want to say one of them, but I'm not.
I know you
going
can't.
to.
I know exactly. Yeah, you can't.
Get used to it.
We got 38 minutes to try and hope somebody slips up, guys.
Whatever. I'm gonna do it. I'm doing it. I'm doing
No.
it. I'm doing it.
No.
You're gonna
I'm doing
slip
it.
up?
No.
What are you doing?
What's he gonna do?
After the first day, Ellie goes home and talks to her husband, and she's like, "I think I got someone pregnant." And you'll see what.
That's it. That's it.
I think we can take Neill at his word that someone becomes pregnant in the game, but that it's almost certainly not who most would assume. There's this Uncharted 4 Easter egg, the American Daughters poster, a pregnant woman in a gas mask. This is the primary evidence the speculators use to posit that Ellie's mother will have an important part in the game. This woman does give that emotional impression of Ellie, the backpack, the revolver, the almost Converse sneakers, but why American Daughters? Daughter in the plural. Does this reference that Ellie had a sister, a twin? Is the mystery woman Ellie's twin? If so, why would Ellie's sister never be mentioned by Marlene, who has known Ellie since birth? I mean, it's possible. Naughty Dog has retconned a sibling into a game before. But like I said, this isn't a flashback. So who is the woman in the poster? Is it Ellie? Does Ellie become pregnant at some point? Given Ellie's sexual preferences, some very dark events would have to transpire. And although I don't think that kind of material is outside of the scope of a Last of Us game, I would be very surprised if Naughty Dog went down that path. Can I play devil's advocate for a second? Many people say, well, it can't possibly be Ellie because she's wearing a gas mask and Ellie's immune. A mother's immunity doesn't necessarily transfer to the baby in the womb. At least, immunity wouldn't begin to happen until the 3rd trimester. And so even if this is a pregnant Ellie, precautions would have to be taken regardless of Ellie's immunity.
Yara. Demons are coming. Cut her down. She's one of them. Lev.
Did you guys catch that?
Yara. Demons are coming. Cut her down. She's one of them. Lev.
So I think this line right here is extremely telling of who this woman is. So we know that in this area of the country, there's two main factions, the WLF, the Washington Liberation Front, and the Seraphites. Now, when I first saw this trailer, I thought this woman was escaping from the cult and they were punishing her for escaping, much like they were going to punish these two. But with that last line, it totally makes sense that she is a part of the WLF.
There is hope. There are lighthearted moments in The Last of Us, but it's all surrounded with this other thing that we're trying to say. Yeah, even with this trailer, like we've been talking about this theme of hate, and you're seeing these two groups and how they're reacting to one another. And a lot of the story is this kind of about this sense of pursuing justice and the positive and negative and kind of like the really messy gray area that can occupy that. So we're seeing Yara and Lev belonging to this religious group, and they've left for some reason, and this circumstance of the scene has caused them to align themselves with someone that they would normally hate and see as less than human, which is Mystery Woman, Guncho, whatever.
Yeah. Guncho seems to be sticking. Yeah. I really thought Lady Hammer would be the winner.
So like I mentioned before, that brings us up to the 2018 PSX gameplay trailer where Ellie is taking on the same faction. So obviously, we're in the same time as the previous trailer. Again, there's no doubt this is the Seraphites. This is their trademark ritual. I guess it is possible that a faction could span from the time of Ellie's birth until now. But I'm really beginning to think, yes, there may be two separate storylines, but they take place in the same time.
Spread out.
Just really quickly before we move on, there's something I noticed right here. It's this little detail, and I think it implies something kind of significant.
What?
Wolf, she came through here. Damn it. Double back. Go.
The woman here calls Ellie Wolf. We're going to move on to the release date trailer, but I just want you to remember this detail. We'll come back to it.
Scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate our kiss from last night?
Look who decided to join us. All right. You all know the drill. Run your routes. Mark your logbooks. You run into anything you can't handle.
Ellie!
You come back.
Now, let's be real. The narrative presented in this trailer is misleading from top to bottom, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's not a malicious type of lie to present the game as something it's not, but purely to create a very specific narrative for the trailer, all while protecting the plot of the full game, yet still giving an emotionally accurate portrayal to what the game will be like. The gist of the themes are all still here. But this trailer seems pretty straightforward, right? If we were to take it at its face value, Ellie and Dina go out on a supply run, Ellie falls through the floor, they have a run-in with Infected, during the chaos they somehow become separated, Ellie tracks down Dina to another faction's safe house, attempts a rescue, but is captured. And we are led to believe that Dina is killed.
Please stop!
And somehow Ellie gets away. Here Tommy comes to console Ellie about Dina and warn her about exacting revenge. Ellie doesn't heed the warnings and proceeds to continue on her path. We see a bunch of gameplay with Ellie fighting multiple enemy types, what appears to be the WLF and the Seraphites, maybe some others mixed in there, Hunters, Fireflies, I'm not really sure. I didn't really see any Firefly type uniforms. Here's Ellie in the shakes again. But can I just pause this? Is that Joel's revolver on her hip? Because you can clearly see her 9mm tucked into her back. I know in the first game she acquires a revolver when we play as her, but why does she have a revolver? It makes you question who really dies.
Get off me! Please stop!
And what's in the box that Tommy brings to her? Is it Dina's belongings? Is it Joel's belongings? Because let's face it, this would be the first time in Naughty Dog history that they laid all the cards out on the table. This trailer is way too leading, way too straightforward in what it's trying to seemingly portray for that to be the actual storyline. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Joel's death would be the most appropriate motivation for Ellie to go on this killing spree. We don't have the same attachment to Dina or to Tommy or to anyone else for it to be anyone but Joel. But stay, don't you know that Joel shows up at the end of the trailer, so Joel can't possibly die. And then you see that interview with Haley Gross, co-writer of The Last of Us Part 2, where she says that they go after Tommy. It's all to rescue Tommy. It's probably Tommy that dies. Yeah, wow. Well, actually, I was just about to show you guys that clip because that's the biggest argument I have for why Joel dies.
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
So the WLF is a faction that Ellie will have to navigate through in Seattle. They're called the Washington Liberation Front, and they've taken over the Seattle QZ, and they've been there for about 15 years. And they're very anti-outsiders. They only care about each other and themselves, and anything else is a threat that they'll shoot on sight. And so they're, at first blush, this incredibly scary, evil group that Ellie has to negotiate as she's trying to, at least in the demo you saw, go after Tommy.
Okay, hear me out. We know this trailer is out of order to what's in the final game. After the media played the demo, a few days after this trailer's release, many came out and said so. For example, yes, Ellie and Dina ride out on patrol, but not after smoking this organic cigarette. They go out on patrol, have this infected encounter, they get lost in the snowstorm, but they end up meeting back up and waiting out the storm, entertaining themselves with video games and smoking while they do. Then in the second half of the trailer, there's no doubt more misdirection. If the true driving force that puts Ellie out there initially in contact with the WLF is Tommy's rescue, not the death of Dina, then I believe this to be the real order of events in the game.
You don't know how large that group is.
Tommy is kidnapped. For whatever reason, Ellie goes after Tommy on her own. Joel catches up to her and joins her.
What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
They reach Tommy, but during the rescue, Joel is killed. That would explain a beaten and bruised Tommy coming to console Ellie, bringing with him Joel's belongings, which is why she now has Joel's revolver on her hip.
You can't stop this.
After the first gameplay trailer, it was hinted Dina dies, and the main evidence for this was Ellie wearing Dina's bracelet. However, this symbolism of the bracelet, literally the design of the hand with the open palm, is more indicative of wishing good luck or a blessing of protection than some sort of token of Dina's memory. So Ellie is out there trying to exact revenge against the WLF for Joel's death. Unfortunately, the Seraphites are looking for the mystery woman because not only is she a part of the WLF, but because she is harboring the apostates. Remember earlier when the Seraphites called Ellie Wolf?
What?
Wolf. She came through here.
I truly think this is a case of mistaken identity. The Seraphites believe Ellie to be this mystery woman, who is probably some higher up in the WLF. Now for the most interesting part. Even though Ellie is out there trying to wipe out the WLF, she will have to join forces with this mystery woman and put aside their differences to overcome the greater threat of the Seraphites. And how's this for speculation? Maybe this mystery woman was the very person who killed Joel.
Please stop!
Consider these Outbreak Day posters. One, obviously Ellie and her switchblade. The other, a mystery woman and her hammer. The way they hold the weapon opposed mirror images of the other. They're on other sides of the same fight, yet both women are holding the weapon with their right hand. They are both fighting for what, in their mind, is the moral high ground, the right side of the conflict.
You can't stop this. What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?